Welcome back to the Foundry by Forge College. Today's explainer is titled Identifying Common Security Pitfalls. We're taking everything we learned in our previous lesson, Foundations of Vulnerability Analysis, and actually applying it to real-world code. We've talked a ton about the theory, right? But today, we're putting boots on the ground. We are going to see what these vulnerabilities actually look like out there in the wild. So let's get into it.
Okay, let's pull out our detective's playbook for this session. We'll start by adopting the vulnerability detective mindset. Then we'll learn how to spot code indicators, interrogate false positives, walk through the triage workflow, and finally, wrap it up by writing a rock-solid debug report.
Section 1. The Vulnerability Detective. Finding the flaws.
So, think about this for a second. When you're analyzing smart contracts, the code is literally your crime scene. How do you catch a smart contract thief before they even strike? Well, you definitely don't wait for the alarms to go off, right? That's way too late. Instead, you look for the open window. You look for the ladder leaning right against the wall, or, in Web3 terms, the glaring lack of access controls.
Moving on to Section 2, Spotting Code Indicators. These are our clues in the code.
So, what exactly is an indicator? Well, think of it as a compact, observable pattern in the code that instantly raises a red flag. Like, a really great example is a contract making an external call before updating its internal state. That is a classic textbook setup for a reentrancy attack. It's basically like handing a total stranger your wallet before even bothering to check their ID. Crazy, right? It's an observable behavior that significantly increases the probability of a vulnerability existing right there.
Now, to make our investigation super systematic, we mechanically classify these clues into 3 distinct categories. This helps us know exactly what kind of evidence we're looking for. First up, we have syntactic indicators. These are your single-line smoking guns, like suddenly seeing the use of tx.origin. Second is local data flow. This involves tracking tainted variables to see if unvalidated data is somehow reaching a critical function or a sink. And third, cross-function flow. This is where we look at how a shared storage variable might be manipulated across multiple functions without the proper access checks in place.
Look at how perfectly these raw, suspicious indicators map directly to known vulnerability classifications. Seriously, it's like a cheat sheet. You see an external call before a state update, your brain should immediately scream reentrancy, and your triage action is to go check the order of operations. Spot a public setter without an access check? Boom. The classification is access control, and you instantly need to go locate those modifiers. This is literally your go-to framework for rapid triage.
Okay, Section 3. Interrogating false positives. This is where we really start interrogating the code.
Now we have to talk about false positives. You'll find that what looks like a glaring vulnerability on line 12 might actually be completely neutralized by a really clever safeguard back on line 10. In detective terms, the suspect has a rock-solid alibi. The indicator absolutely exists, yes, but the contextual safeguards completely remove the actual threat. As you dive into more courses with us at Forge College, I promise you'll develop a really sharp intuition for spotting these.
Your job as a detective is to ruthlessly interrogate the code to find this mitigating context. You got to ask yourself things like, is the external call targeting a trusted, immutable library? Or maybe, is the state update idempotent? Meaning, it doesn't really matter if it gets executed multiple times. You absolutely have to capture the specific assumptions that would negate the vulnerability. Because if you don't, well, you're just going to be writing debug reports about ghosts.
Which brings us to Section 4. The triage workflow, establishing a repeatable protocol.
To stay consistent, we use a very specific, repeatable 4-step protocol. Step 1 is scan. You're just running simple pattern searches for high-signal indicators. Step 2, contextualize. Look around, check the surrounding state and the modifiers. Step 3 is validate. You want to simulate a short execution trace, or maybe write a minimal test to actually verify the exploit. And finally, Step 4, document. Package the exact lines of code in your rationale into a tight, undeniable evidence file.
Let's actually look at this in practice. What we have here is a classic legacy pre-0.8.0 Solidity blunder. Over on the left, we've got the vulnerable pattern. The external call using call.value is happening before the balance is even deducted. Classic prime reentrancy indicator. But then on the right, look at the secure pattern. The state update perfectly precedes the external call. It is such a simple ordering fix, right? But I'm telling you, spotting that tiny detail is the difference between a secure contract and becoming a very embarrassing headline on crypto Twitter.
The good news is you don't have to do all of this purely by eye. A scanner can automatically flag the exact line of the indicator, like line 12 here, and it even gives you the immediate context, showing the state update down on line 14. You get exactly the precise snippet you need. No more scrolling through thousands of lines of code until your eyes literally start to bleed.
All right, Section 5, writing the debug report. It's time to officially file the case.
When filing the case, we use a strict 4-part structure. This keeps our reports super compact and, more importantly, immediately actionable for the engineers who have to read them. You need a punchy one-line title, a clear classification using standard taxonomy, the evidence, so your code snippet and a minimal trace, and finally a preliminary impact rating of either low, medium, or high. No fluff, no long essays, just the facts.
Take a look at this example of an impact rating. It says, high impact, attacker can drain user funds via repeated reentry when combined with public withdrawal. It is just a single, punchy sentence, but it definitively explains the threat and completely justifies that high rating. Any engineer reading this knows exactly what is at stake immediately.
Section 6, conclusion and next steps. Let's wrap this investigation up.
Okay, here are the absolute key takeaways you need to remember. First, treat every indicator as a hypothesis, okay? Not a guarantee. Second, always explicitly capture any mitigating context so you can rule out those pesky false positives. Third, gather minimal, laser-precise evidence. Give them just the lines that matter. And fourth, always stick to that repeatable 4-part reporting structure. If you follow these principles, you are going to ensure that every single finding you present is defensible, incredibly accurate, and completely free of sloppy errors.
So what actually happens to all this hard work you just did? Well, in our next explainer, we're going to dive into impact analysis and prioritization. You're going to take those preliminary impact ratings you just assigned in your debug reports, and we'll use them to establish a strict mathematical prioritization scheme for remediation. Basically, you catch the bugs here, and next time we figure out what gets fixed first.
Are you ready to turn your vulnerability hypotheses into bulletproof debug reports? I know you are. Thank you so much for joining this explainer. To take your detective skills even further, make sure you visit us at forge.college. Just remember, the code never lies, but it definitely likes to hide the truth. Will you be the one to uncover the next million-dollar exploit, or will the attackers get there first? Keep those eyes sharp, and I'll catch you in the next one.